Perek Beis, Mishnah Daled. This follows from the previous Mishnah. Omer Rab Shimon. Rabbi Shimon said, Ma bein shkolim lachatos. Why is there a difference between shkolim, when one's collecting for the half shekel, and one is collecting money for a chatos? In the case of the shkolim, we learnt that if a person is collecting coins and says, this will be for my half shekel, Beis Hillel say, Moisoron chulin, whatever's extra and surplus will be chulin, not kodesh. Whereas we also learnt that if it was for collecting for a chatos, and he says the same lashon, he says elu lachatos, Beis Hillel there say that whatever's surplus to requirements will be a nadava, will be a donation to the Beis Hamikdash. Why is there a difference between the half shekel, collecting money for the half shekel, and collecting money for the chatos? Answers Rab Shimon, Shkolim yesh lahem kitzvah. The Shkolim have a fixed amount, and therefore, according to Beis Hillel, anything beyond that fixed amount, even though he says Hari Elu l'shikli, it's therefore chulin. A chatos doesn't have a fixed amount that can be spent to buy a chatos. Chatos ein lo kitzvah, and therefore, says Beis Hillel, when a person says, this is for my chatos, all the money is hekdesh. Says Rabbi Yehuda, that's not quite right. Rabbi Yehuda oimer, af lishkolim ein lohem kitzvah. Even the shkolim do not have a fixed amount. Why is that? Explains Rabbi Yehuda, Shekeshe'olu Yisrael min hagoyla, when Yisrael came up from Bovel, min hagoyla, in exile in Bovel, the standard coinage, hoyushoiklin, they would take standard coinage like for shkolim, was darkonos. The standard business coinage in use was the darkonos, which the Bartanur explains was a golden coin, and it was equivalent to 2 saloim. So as that was the standard coinage, they would take half of that and bring it as half a shekel. Of course, it wasn't half a shekel, it was a selah. Chozru lishkal saloim. They then, subsequently, the standard coinage became the selah, which we've explained before. Actually, the selah is the equivalent to the shekel in the time of the Torah. And therefore, if the standard coinage was a selah, half of that would be equivalent to a half a shekel at the time of the Torah, time of Moshe, although called a shekel, but it was equivalent to half a shekel, and that's what they started to give, which in fact would be spot on the right amount that the Torah said should be given. Chozru lishkal tovoim. The standard coinage then dropped down from the selah to the tovoim. The tovoim were half a selah. Half a selah is actually the right amount for the half shekel. That's the standard coinage. They therefore ubikshu lishkal dinrim. They wanted to take half of that amount to bring as their half shekel. That would have been a dinner, because a dinner for dinrim make a selah. The standard coinage is half a selah, and therefore they wanted to take half of that. Half of that would have been a quarter of a selah. But they weren't allowed to do that, because that was less than the amount that the Torah prescribes when it says they should take a half a shekel. A half a shekel is equivalent to half a selah, not a quarter of a selah. So that they didn't allow. However, if it was more than that required amount, then that was permissible. As we mentioned at the beginning, if the standard coinage was the darkonos, which was 2 saloim, they could give half of that, which is 1 seller, which is twice as much as really necessary. So Rabbi Yehuda is saying it's not fixed. The amount for the half shekel is not fixed. It depends on the time. Omer Rab Shimon replies, no. Afal pi kain, even so, it depending on the time, various amounts were given as the half shekel. However, yad kulon shoveb, whatever was given at that time, everybody gave that same amount. And therefore, says Rab Shimon, when someone says they're collecting these coins for their half shekel, it's a fixed amount at that time, and everybody gives the same. Aval chatos, when a person's collecting coins for their chatos, and they say, I want this to be my chatos, zeh mevi besela, some people bring a chatos, the value of a seller, zeh mevi b'shtayim, some people bring shtayim, zeh mevi b'sholish. And therefore, says Rab Shimon explaining Beis Hillel, when someone says that these coins are for my chatos, even though he can get a chatos for a smaller amount than the full amount is collected, because there is no fixed amount for a chatos, all the coins that he's collected will be hektish.